Good day. In this time, I'm going to talk about 5 recent advancements in behavioral interviews. The first one would be the no star trend. And basically, this stems from the idea that many candidates interpret the star format as an expectation during their job interviews. But as of recently, I've had some success stories with candidates who went beyond the star format. They basically remodeled that format so it sounds even better. I made a video as of recently on this topic if you would like to learn more. The second advancement in behavioral interviews, and especially this on the candidate side, if you are serious about behavioral interviews and you have prepared them thoroughly, you may wish to consider sharing your story bank with your interviewers, preferably in advance of your interview, in a bid to have a better conversation, to raise the quality level of the conversation, because the assumption would be if they have your story bank, they would know more or less your type of experience. Right now, keep in mind the context is one where 95% of candidates don't even have a story bank. Okay. The third thing I'd like to talk about here would be that interview questions have become more predictable these days, and yes, this is also due to AI. Okay, so this is an evolution because AI made it super easy for you to predict the types of questions you might expect in job interviews. So the response on the interviewers side would be that they would try to make those questions sound slightly more counterintuitively. So the behaviors remain the same, but they could reword those questions. For example, they could open-end the question, they could make it sound a bit more hypothetical, or I could even put some other examples on the screen here. So my point is that for you as a candidate, this means your listening skills must be seriously good, to read between the lines and understand, again, the core behavior. The core behaviors are the same, will never change. Maybe the emphasis on core behaviors evolves, but still you should expect counterintuitive questions, such as the brain teasers trend a few years ago, many years ago actually. Right, then the fourth thing I like to talk about here will be the tests in job interviews, specific behavioral interviewing tests. The older ones, you probably heard of the backbone test. Some of you, where they want to see if you're if you agree for the sake of social cohesion, or whether you're someone too agreeable, so to speak. And there's also the deep dive test, which is still a very popular test. They deep proof your expertise using follow-up and challenge questions. But there's also, some relatively newer ones, or at least according to my experience, such as to test your standards in your work. So for example, if I'd ask you, tell me about a product, service, or solution that was already receiving good customer feedback. What did you do? Okay, when you improved a product, service, or solution which was already working reasonably well. A candidate with lower standards would talk about how they fixed some bugs which were pending. An exceptional candidate with high standards would talk about how they looked around the corner and improved that product, service, or solution beyond the customer's imagination. Right, this would be at least in theory. Okay, or another test, which is actually nothing new, the conflict questions. But there is a trend of the remote work trend. And the issue is, if you've been working all your life remotely, you will automatically lack certain interpersonal skills, such as dealing with conflict and interpersonal relationships. Right, so there is an emphasis with these things, especially nowadays. Right, there's also another test of a hands-on versus hands-off candidate, for which I also made a video as of recently with a number of examples. So the hands-on versus hands-off discussion has been traditionally, to determine the seniority of the role that the candidate is targeting. So how senior is that candidate? If you're hands-off, it's perceived you're more senior than hands-on. at least in theory. But it could also signal some red flags, such as your lack of interest in the type of work involved. Okay, so the hands-on, hands-off test is also something you must take into account. And finally, the fifth, last but certainly not least, there's something what I call the AI candidates. And basically the evolution in behavioral interviews is that interviewers have developed an ear to screen for AI answers, on a topic on which I just recently made a video with how they spot AI answers in job interviews. Maybe it's also a reason why interviews have become shorter these days, because if you go with an AI answer during a job interview with a high-performing company, then you should understand that your chances are not to your favor, right? So long story short, there is advancements in behavioral interviews, and contrary to some popular belief that some people are saying that interviews are trending towards more technical stuff. In my opinion, the behavioral interviews are used more, not less, than in the past. And as you see, there's still advancements, so they still work, so to speak. Okay, so I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.